Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Aniston, and this is Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. I'm your host, and today we're bringing to you an incredible human being, somebody that I deeply resonate with. And this is the first time he and I are actually getting to have a conversation together. And yet I feel like I know him so deeply and profoundly because we share so many different common interests and how we approach life and who we want to be, and focusing in on impacting people where they are so that they can catapult to where they want to go. This is a gentleman who used to be a professional athlete who then turned author and became a best-selling author and speaker and coach. He has more than 15,000 hours of coaching under his belt and has the ability to be able to support anyone with where they are to live the life of their dreams. This is another example of how every moment that is happening in your life is perfectly preparing you for who it is you get to become next. Nick, Connor, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I'm really excited to introduce you to the Empowered Life community.
Rudy, it's a great thing about the internet, right? Where we can connect with people from, at this point, 2 different continents. I'm over here in Estonia, as you know, and we get to meet like-minded people. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you today and bringing some value for your audience.
Well, we know there's going to be plenty value to be had, and that is, anyone who knows you or the work that you're doing or has had an opportunity to just go in and look at your profiles on Instagram or go and look at your website and just the plethora of I want to say knowledge that you bring, but in so many different areas of your life. And where I want to focus in is where I'm selfishly spend my time, and that is always in the further development of people and wanting to learn and to grow and to take value from life and lessons. And so my question to you before we get started is, what does it mean to you to live an empowered life?
Well, I think that so many of us are caught up in the opinions of others and the agendas of others. And we forget that we're operating from that place daily. And we're kind of subconsciously being driven by these things that are kind of ingrained into us. And we really have no idea why we're doing what we're doing. And so we find ourselves down the path of life with kids, with a mortgage, with a career, and maybe some success, some money in the bank or some status. And we find ourselves a bit unfulfilled and anxious and maybe even depressed. And we wonder why that is. And I think that the best way to empower ourselves is to do the work, to figure out why that is and be brave enough, courageous enough, bold enough to be willing to remove the things that we're doing that aren't serving us, that aren't effective in helping us live the type of life that we want to live. And certainly, as you know, personal development is such a great tool for us to be able to go down that path. And but that's where it starts, really. There's so much more to empowering ourselves, but it always starts within.
I love that you referenced doing the work. And, I think that when people are living their best life, it's when they do the work. And when you do the work, you get to reap the reward of having done the work and live a beautiful, abundant, joyful life. You obviously have figured out how to do that. You just said in the beginning of the episode, you're in Estonia, you are, very successful, best-selling author, you have a thriving coaching program, you support people, you speak on stages all over the world. And so you've got a tremendous amount of not only knowledge of bringing it forward, but evidence that's been stacked in that when you do the work, you get to reap the reward. But obviously this wasn't always the case. I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about what was your story and what got you to who you are today. Ultimately, what really qualifies you to be the guy that's supporting so many people now?
Well, my story with personal development started on the heels of me being released from professional baseball. And I was searching for my new path. And baseball thankfully gave me some tools, confidence, and belief that I was able to set my mind to a goal and accomplish that goal. But I had a lot of insecurities that sports covered up. Growing up, I couldn't find my place to fit in. I come from a mixed background. My mom's black, my dad's white. I was raised by my mom. And sports kind of covered up the fact that I struggled to feel like I fit in. And sports was kind of a safe haven for me to thrive and to cover up a lot of the insecurities that I had developed growing up. And so when sports was gone, not only did I not have that cover up, but I also had lost the identity that shaped pretty much my entire life, which is this identity of being an athlete. And so I had to, at 27 years old, when all my friends were graduated from college at this point, many of them married, many of them already had their career path picked out, maybe even a mortgage. I was trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do with my life. And so I had to learn really quickly that charm and good looks and an athletic background wasn't going to be enough for me to have the type of life that I wanted. And so like a lot of people, I tried to solve my character problems with currency. So I thought making money and status and all of these things were going to be the cure for me. But ultimately, I found out pretty quickly that that wasn't the case. And personal development kind of came to the rescue. And when I found personal development, I wasn't reading these books like The Alchemist or Awaken the Giant Within or whatever those early books are that I read from the perspective of somebody who wanted to apply the principles. I wanted to be the person delivering the message. I said, wow, this is incredible. If I could help people feel the way that I feel reading these books, I could make a path for myself. And that got me into some trouble because what I've learned over the years now is that, you can't necessarily help other people if you haven't first helped yourself. And I wanted to skip to the fun stuff, writing the book and speaking on stage and doing all the incredible things that we get to do as we're out here serving people. But I had to learn how to embody those things that I wanted to teach and those lessons that I was learning before I was out there trying to pass those principles on to other people. So, but man, the path has been a wild one. I started speaking in the youth market as a motivational speaker and found a niche serving inner city schools. I don't know if you're familiar with the Title I program, but any inner city schools, 90% of the kids are on free and reduced lunch. They came from backgrounds like I had. And I was on that path and had an experience where my father needed some help to overcome his challenges, his addictions, and I wanted to help. And so I signed up to help him, moved him out from Utah to come live with me in North Carolina and had an opportunity to get to know him as a man, get to know him as a father, certainly ask some tough questions, but ultimately kind of remove him from that totem pole as my hero and see him as a human being. And that was such a pivotal point in my life. But that became a pivotal moment, not only because I got to reevaluate my relationship with my father, but I also got to heal some past traumas and ultimately find some peace and take that into the work that I got to do as a coach and as a speaker at the time. So yeah, that's kind of where it all started, man.
I'd like to give some context to anyone that's listening, because obviously I know a little more about your story in having done some research. And, you grew up in a single family home where your mom raised you and your father wasn't present. And now you just referenced wanting to get to know your dad and bringing your dad to where you were and getting to know him, and he moved in with you and that he was struggling with addiction. I'm also aware that the catalyst for your inner journey, you have stated that it was when your father passed. Do you want to speak into a little bit about the catalyst? And before you answer the question, I want to set the stage a little more. I asked you in the very beginning, the question was, what qualifies Nick to be doing what he's doing today? And I don't mean what are your degrees and what are the accolades and what have you achieved. I mean, what has life provided to support you to become the man that you've become? And the Empowered Life podcast is always about looking at every single moment that transpires in your life as the qualification for who you get to become. And in every successful person's journey, there's always a defining moment. And in some instances, many defining moments. You leaving, Major League Baseball, defining moment, not going into the league, having to figure out your identity, putting your worth into something else. And all of these are defining moments, but you've spoken into the catalyst of change that came through your father's death. And I think that so many people could gain value from the experience of what you've gone through now that you're in a position to teach from that.
Yeah, there's so many pivotal moments. And I think that it's such a great thing for all of us to do, to go back to our story and play out that narrative and explore what those moments were for each of us. And my journey has been so marked by my relationship with my father, from an early age, looking up to him, even though he wasn't around, because of his athletic reputation. He played in the NBA, and we come from a long line of athletes, and that shaped the trajectory of my life. And I believe that we rise to the standards that are set for us. And I pursued sports until I was 27. And when I got done with that, the connection point with my father, it fell off. And so I always had this desire to get to know him as a man. And so when he was going through a very difficult time, it was easy for me to raise my hand and say, yeah, I want to help. And having no idea what was required to, move somebody who's overcoming a very serious addiction into my home, what it eventually did for me is it helped me let go of some of the resentment that I was harboring for my father. And it also helped me embrace and accept some of the truth about who I was, and certainly who I wasn't. I could see so much of myself in my father. And, ultimately, I think as sons, we are the last ones to take our father off the totem pole. And thankfully during that year, I was able to go through a lot of that in a very close environment, 700 square foot of apartment with paper thin walls. And, ultimately my dad decided to take his own life, and I lost my father to suicide. But what I learned through that very tragic moment was that you can find peace in chaos. You can find clarity during a time where most people have trouble seeing the next step in front of them. And that's ultimately been one of the greatest gifts my father could ever give me. And, unfortunately, I can't tell him that. But in the work that I get to do, I am helping people overcome what might seem to be trivial problems, getting on video for the first time, or starting their coaching business, leaving the career that they thought was going to be their path, but moving on and starting a new career, or going through a divorce, whatever it might be. That experience with my father helped position me unique to help people transition through life. And so it's an honor to be able to do that for my clients.
I want to just acknowledge, obviously, the passing of your father, and I'm profoundly sorry for your loss. I know it's been almost 11 years now, but that, I would imagine, never, ever, ever goes away. And I want to touch on a moment of how we're always highlighting that everything is always a beautifully, divinely orchestrated moment. And I don't necessarily mean in the passing or in the loss of your father, but in the experience of having him move into your home and having the difficulties. But in that process, you said you were able to release some of the resentment, some of the anger, and you gained a profound amount of knowledge that you today teach to move people forward. And without those experiences, you wouldn't get to be the guy that you are today. I share this because people are always in a struggle. And when someone's in that struggle, I want to remind them there's beauty in the struggle if you're present to the beauty. And we don't always have to wait till the end for us to be able to look back and say, gosh, you know what, that really was a gift. If we can wake up every day and acknowledge the gift is present. And so I would love it if you could speak to us a little bit about just what were some of the lessons that you learned, or if you could give us a tool that you used or you gained in being able to forgive your father or to release resentment, because I think so many people are anchored into a past because they don't want to let something go and they don't know what's on the other end of that.
Yeah, well, I had this image just pop in my mind. Maybe you've seen the way that they trap monkeys in certain parts of the world. And they don't have to come up with any elusive trap or any complex plan. They just put something that they want to eat, the monkey wants to eat, inside of a hole, and the monkey will reach his hand inside of that hole and grab whatever's in there and will not let go. And that's ultimately what traps the monkey in place. And that image just popped into my mind. I think it's very hard to let go of things that we don't understand. And we typically don't understand things because we aren't curious enough to ask questions. And so we go through life making these assumptions about the way things were, or maybe even the way things ought to be. And one of the unexpected gifts of having my father there with me was that I got to ask a lot of questions that I think people go through life avoiding asking. It was very difficult to be in that place to ask these types of questions. Certainly it must have been for my father. It definitely was uncomfortable for me. But we were able to go through that. And I was able to let go of these things that were really keeping me stuck. And the number one place that I was stuck was that I was harboring resentment for somebody else. I was playing a bit of a victim. And ultimately, following that, what it set me on a trajectory to do was take ultimate responsibility for my life, place all 10 fingers squarely back at me for why my life wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, and why that was also an opportunity for me to take that same responsibility to create the life that I wanted. And so, it's to proactively put yourself into situations where you are uncomfortable is a big ask for most of us living a life where we're pursuing big things. We have families, we have careers, we're ambitious, and to take on something new that seems difficult just for the sake of doing it feels like a big ask. And sometimes I think personal development falls into that category. It's like, oh gosh, I know that I could probably be more. I know that I feel like I'm not meant to live an average life, but man, I feel like my plate's already really full. I already feel like I'm stretched pretty thin. But it's usually those things that we're avoiding doing because it feels like it's adding too much pressure or stress or opening a door that we don't know we're capable of going through. Those are usually the things that help us really break through and feel more fulfilled, feel more peace, feel more purpose on the path that we're already on. And so, I'm a firm believer in self-inflicting that type of adversity in our own life. And simply, for me, it's waking up much earlier than I want to, than I feel comfortable doing, sitting alone in silence, solitude, and stillness when especially things are difficult, asking myself for the truth. What is the truth of this situation? And being willing to stare that truth down, whether I like the answer or not. And ultimately, this is a really effective thing to teach people to do in their life. It's a skill that equips them to go out into the world and be better for themselves, first and foremost, but then also for the people in their lives. And that's a cornerstone of everything that I do now is helping people feel comfortable with the adversities they face, the setbacks they go through, not avoiding those things, but actually proactively preparing themselves by deciding to do the difficult thing daily, even when they don't necessarily have to.
So I want to touch on something that you said, and I want to dive in a little more after that into the very work that you do and the results that you drive in the lives of your clients. But you mentioned turning all 10 fingers back at you. And for so many people, we can hear the words, but I'm curious, what is your process to support people in understanding that life is serving them in every moment and that they need to take 100% accountability for where they're at? Because we can hear your story, and anyone listening, they're not associated or tied with their emotions to your story, so we can just listen and learn. But if it's to themselves, they feel the tremendous emotion around anything that's happening in their life. So I'd like to use yours as an example. And you just said you were raised in a single family home where your mom raised you, your dad was absent, he was playing in the NBL. You wanted to have this relationship with him. You didn't have the relationship that you wanted at the time. There was all of this animosity, resentment, confusion, anger, frustration that would have, I can imagine, built up over years. And you just said, well, I had to point all 10 fingers at me so that I could create relief. But someone listening is going to be thinking, well, he didn't choose his father to not be home. He didn't choose to have these situations and circumstances. So I'd love for you, in your own words, to elaborate a little bit on what do you mean about taking all 10 fingers and pointing them back at you so that you can create the relief.
Well, at that point, nobody was coming to save me, and it was very obvious. And I think that we reach a point in our lives where we are faced with that truth that, look, life can be difficult, and life is likely going to continue to be difficult. And many of the adversities that we face, we were born into. Our families, the country that we're from, living here in Estonia, that's become profoundly obvious that how fortunate we are to grow up in the United States or multiple countries that were free. I mean, my wife's family was under Soviet rule until 1992, right? So we're born into these adversities that we certainly don't get to choose and decide. But I also realized at that time, because that was, let's say, 5-6 years after I transitioned from sports, that a lot of the adversities that I was facing in my life at that point were because I was inflicting those on myself. So at that point, it was very obvious two types of adversity. Yeah, there was some stuff my father did. There was some stuff from my childhood that it was not my fault. It was terrible that I had to go through those things. And I also was able to recognize that there were some things that I was doing that were keeping me from being the type of man that I wanted to be, keeping me from showing up the way that I wanted to show up. And so I didn't make this decision at the time. It was the beginning of me making the decision that if I want my life to turn out the way that I want, then I'm going to just make a hard and fast rule that I'm going to take unfair amounts of responsibility for my circumstances. And what that's allowed me to do is, well, a lot of things, but it's made me seek, and it's made me be curious. And where that led me almost directly after that experience with my father was to walk into a church and pursue belief in something bigger than myself. And that was I would say, the biggest turning point of my life, even bigger than the turning point with my father. And so taking ultimate responsibility is a starting point. Deciding that you're not going to be a victim of the circumstances that you're in, but instead rather find a way for you to turn all of that into something positive and start taking steps in that direction through your own power. Because again, nobody's coming. Nobody's coming to save you. And so that belief's gotten me through a lot and has opened a lot of doors and ultimately has been an empowering thing for the clients that I've been able to work with.
So you spoke into spending a lot of time with yourself, asking hard questions. You have mentioned in different platforms that you teach clarity, courage, and confidence. And so I'm curious if you could speak into a little bit of how do you support somebody to find clarity, to tap into the courage to do it, and have the confidence to move forward.
I've been a big believer in addition by subtraction. So I think that we generally don't need to add a whole lot to our lives. We generally need to remove certain things from our lives, whether that's beliefs, certainly behaviors, crutches, vices, things that are muddying the waters, distracting us from the greatness, the opportunity that we're capable of. And so removing the need to please others, or removing the temptation to distract or sedate ourselves out of feeling certain emotions, to avoid, to isolate, putting things front and center instead. And I find that when you get somebody out of their way, that clears up a lot of things. The anxiety dissipates, the depressive states start to fade without prescription pills, or certainly without alcohol being abused, things like that, pornography, whatever the coping mechanism is. When you start to remove those behaviors, it starts to clarify the path that seems so murky at times for people. And once a path is clear, the next thing we got to do is have the courage to take the step. And I think of this as energy. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book Power versus Force, a great book to learn about energetic frequencies, and courage is kind of a tipping point to pull somebody out of those lower level energetic states of shame, guilt, fear, desire, and starts to tip into willingness, openness, acceptance, these higher energetic states that bring us life, that give us life, even though our external world might not even be changing. And so courage is a powerful thing to help somebody develop. And, the thing I love about personal development is we have great principles, great tools, great strategies. But what courage adds to all of that is evidence. When somebody starts taking steps, pursuing things that they find difficult or they've been avoiding, after they've removed some of those behaviors that have stood in the way for so long, they start to have some evidence that supports these principles that they're likely learning through podcasts like this or books or whatever it might be. And that evidence becomes critical when you really want to start to develop unconditional confidence, which is the third thing that I love to teach, which is just to say that, fake it till you make it has its place. But if you can back up evidence that this story you're telling yourself about who you are, where you're going, if you can combine that with some evidence that you're actually capable of that, you can walk into pretty much any room and hold space and show up the way that you could be proud of.
I knew that we were so kindred in how we show up because, I teach the energetics of how we show up out and in the world. And what you just said was the beautiful framework for creating change. And that once you get to a point where you start to stack evidence, not only do you see that it works, not only do you have tangibles that you can touch and feel, but you're also rewiring the brain because you're telling the brain these things are possible. And I love that. Something that you do in your household, it's your motto, and that is that we can do hard things. I would love for you to speak in a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, when I met my wife, we were working for a coaching company called Southwestern Consulting, and one of the things we loved most while we were both working there that we got to go into these sales organizations and teach them was how to create a creed. Certainly every company has a mission statement, a vision statement, but a creed. And it was about not necessarily what they do inside of that company, but who they're going to be. And so we embraced that as we started looking at our lives together and getting married. And one of the first things, to her credit, she wanted to write on that creed was that we can do hard things. And, I had no idea, neither did she, how much we were going to need that coming into our marriage. 45 days after we got married, my healthy wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and we never expected that. And we can do hard things was something that we leaned on. Months later, we lost our first child, and we can do hard things became something that we leaned on, not just about what we needed to do, but who we were going to be, how we were going to go through that season of difficulty. And we did our best to embody that. And it wasn't easy, but we stuck together. We got through it. And here we are anticipating our second baby coming up here in July, another baby girl. And we can do hard things is something that we're excited to pass on to our daughters.
I did not know that you had lost your child, and so I'm so sorry for your loss. But congratulations on your second daughter that's coming into your beautiful family. I love the notion of we can do hard things, because if we tackle something that's really hard every day in our life, we actually tell the brain that we can achieve things that are very difficult. And the part of the brain that does things that are more courageous, more bold, and needs to process with a little more courage actually grows. It expands inside the brain. But if you shy away from doing something, and I'm talking about remedial tasks in your everyday, but if you shy away from doing something hard, that part of your brain that's more courageous, more bold, actually shrinks. And so you spend less time doing that. My daughter this morning came and said to me, I want to get into the cold plunge tonight and I'm going to do it for 2 minutes. And, she's 8 years old and she'll get into the cold plunge and she'll sit there and she's freezing and it's 40 degrees, right? And so she'll shiver 30 seconds. And then I said, all right, it's 30 seconds. You can get out. And she goes, I want to stay for 1 minute. And then so she stayed for a minute and that's where her benchmark was. And so a friend of ours we encouraged to get a cold plunge and their son, 10 years old, well, he stayed in for 1.5 minutes. When she heard that, she was like, I need to do 1.5 minutes now. And so she did 1.5 minutes. And so this morning she came to me and she said, hey, when I get home tonight, can I do 2 minutes tonight? And I love that because we're teaching an 8-year-old that you can do hard things. Razor blades feel like they're tearing your skin apart. But at 8 years old, if you can learn that skill and you can grow that part of your brain that says we can do courageous things, when it turns time to record a video for social media in the future or to get dressed for an interview or to do something, that we would say is normally a debilitating thing for the average person, they just push right through that. And I love that that is a part of who you are and how you show up inside your family. But also when you get to the really difficult things, you've got the foundations and the evidence to be able to stack onto that. Just incredible. I absolutely love that. Your kids are very lucky. So I want to ask you, you support so many high performers, and I spend the majority of my time working with people who have already achieved great things in life. And it's about making their lives more whole and feeling more fulfilled and more joy and understanding the value and the meaning in everything that they're doing. And then taking what has been their success and turning around and teaching from that vantage point so that they can, inspire their company, not necessarily to make more money, but to live more whole lives. Well, you work with high performers yourself. And, a lot of what I've learned about looking into the work that you do is you support high achievers, but, they come up against a whole lot of common dilemmas. And I would love for you to speak into what are the things that you find hold the most people back from being able to achieve the highest or the greatest potential of what they have?
Well, so many things, but just having listened to a few of your podcasts in knowing a little bit about the work that you do, I think that answering this question, can I relax now, has become really an interesting question to answer for me. And as a high achiever, as somebody who's hard charging, pursuing big goals, oftentimes the temptation to just go from success to success to success is just kind of the expectation that high achievers put on themselves. It's just kind of the way that it is. And I've for one reason or another, I don't know why. I think it was because I achieved success as an athlete, and anything after that felt like it was kind of a consolation prize. I optimized for fulfillment. I optimized for peace and joy. I wanted to really love what I was doing. And I believe that giving ourselves permission as hard chargers and high achievers to scale back when we are feeling like we're not enjoying the journey is a superpower. Because I've dealt with so many high achievers, and I know you have too, who come to me and they're just flat out unhappy, and generally when I'm getting approached by clients, maybe it's the case with you, certainly in personal development, we see this, or, doing anything that could be called life coaching, there's generally something that's fallen apart that motivates the connection point to reach out to a coach. So marriage has ended, or feedback from a doctor that was tough to hear, diabetes, whatever it might be, because they've let themselves go physically, finances, a bad investment, something like that has sparked this need to have relief. And so I believe that one of the best things that we can do as hard chargers is to embrace this idea that we can enjoy the journey, and we need to learn how to optimize that skill set. And just like we would anything else, we hire business coaches, consultants, analysts, accountants. We hire for a lot of things, but we also need to be hiring to learn how to take our foot off the gas so that we can re-enter this place that we want to dominate. And that's an okay word, by the way. Yes, you can dominate. You can keep your edge. You can do big things while also feeling fulfilled and having some joy and some peace. And so I think that's the biggest thing holding hard chargers back. It's being willing to say, yeah, I want to enjoy my life. I want to be happy. And that's okay. I can still have that competitive edge that's helped me achieve so much in my life.
So you spoke into optimizing for joy, optimizing for success, optimizing for, and you kept going. And I would love for you to speak into, as we start to bring this episode to a close, how can someone optimize for each of these areas?
Set aside some time for you every single day and make that routine. I think that is the most simple ask for anybody is to, you're giving time to your business, you're giving time to your family, and you're showing up and pouring as much as you can into those places willingly. That you maybe wear it as a badge of honor. But how are you showing up for yourself? Certainly with your health and fitness, but also just giving yourself some time to sit and think and feel and be honest and allow yourself to have negative or positive emotions. And, backing that wake up time down an hour or two might be uncomfortable in the beginning, but I've never implemented this in one of my clients' lives and had them say, I don't want to wake up this early. Maybe I want to get 30 minutes or an hour more sleep. No, they generally say, I'm going to wake up actually an hour earlier because this is so incredible. I'm gaining so much from this space between my responsibilities and when I wake up. And that's one way to optimize for joy, for peace, because it gets us into a state of self-actualization, right? Where we're taking care of kind of our basic needs. And then we can show up to our lives in overflow, where we're more present. We're more able to extend the feelings and create space for other people to feel what they're feeling. So that morning time space is one of the main tools that I use to help clients optimize for joy and fulfillment and some peace in their very busy lives.
For anyone that's listening, the response that you just gave was really about being more intentional about how do you want to show up and then creating the necessary space around whatever it is that you're intentioning. And for so many people, they wake up, they get busy with their day. My morning routine starts 4 a.m., 5 a.m., depending on where I am in the world. And it's my most sacred time. My children, who are 8 and 10, and when they were 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and, they would just come down and quietly sit with me, sometimes in my lap. But no, like everybody knew this is daddy's time. This is mommy's time. This is when we pour into each other. And so it's a rule in our household that you get to first fill your cup. And I love that you speak into that and teach other people to be able to do the same. And that when people do it, everything else seems to expand. In the beginning of the episode, you mentioned so many people want to do something, but they overwhelmed and get stopped because their plate's already so full. And well, how do I possibly fit more on my plate? When you create the time and the space in the morning, the plate naturally and organically expands. Whether you choose to remove or add, that's up to you, but it's organically going to create more coherence because you've expanded your capacity to be able to achieve more. For anyone who is looking to do business with you, wants to learn a little bit more about you, has resonated with what you've had to say, I want to direct them obviously to your website. I'm going to put your website into the show notes. I'm also going to put your social media handles in because I think there's great knowledge there. But in perusing your website, you have different aspects where you serve and support people to grow. And AMP is a section on your website where you really support people to create the most profound shifts and changes, because not only are you changing them internally, but you're also physically changing them. Could you speak into a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I've found that elevates our energetic state more than moving our bodies and challenge ourselves physically. And I've also found that there's generally nothing that we delay more or procrastinate on more than prioritizing time for our health and fitness. It's the first thing that goes when finances get tough. It's generally the first thing that goes when we're scheduling ourselves out instead of taking time for ourselves. So AMP is really designed to give yourself that space through a process, through a routine that you commit to every single day that gives you evidence that you can do hard things, that you can change the internal and external version of yourself that you're looking at in the mirror every single day. And it's that playbook that we put together for our clients inside of AMP that inevitably prepares them for the adversity that's going to come in their lives and their business. So it's a very proactive and intentional approach to helping somebody shift their beliefs, change their body, and be more prepared for life.
For anyone listening, AMP stands for the Academy of Maximized Potential. And if you just go on and click the link and go and actually see the before and after photographs of the transformation of some of these people, it's so hard to not be inspired because, you can see what somebody's been able to achieve in 90 days. And that's the external physical change that's happened. We can only imagine because we cannot quantify the change that's happening internally through the work that we're doing. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on the Empowered Life podcast. I appreciate you so much, brother. I love your message. I love who you are and how you show up out in the world. And, I started the episode by thanking you before we hit record. That time is by far our most invaluable resource. And anytime anyone spends time with me, whether that is recording or listening to the episode, I love to acknowledge that. I love to say thank you for coming in and pouring into our community. And now I'm going to ask my community, please go out there and pour into Nick. Go in and check him out, see what he's doing, follow him on social media. And if you're up for the task, I challenge you to find how you can work with him because obviously you're doing amazing work out in the world. Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Rudy. Thanks for having me, man. It's been fun.
To everybody listening, we'll catch you in the next episode of the Empowered Life podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.